Involved in politics when I was younger. In fact, last city council meeting was my last one that I came to, or my first one that I came to. But as I grew older and talked to my parents about who I was and those around me, met other young people with similar backgrounds and even different viewpoints, I began to realize that if I wanted to have any chance of the so-called unalienable rights laid out by our country's Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, then I would have to unfortunately get involved in politics. Because every day in every branch of government, as we can clearly see here at this meeting, people are discussing whether or not I should be afforded those same unalienable rights. Life, whether my life as a transgendered male, the life of a young child who has told their parents that they don't fit in and feel uncomfortable, the life of perhaps a lesbian mother who wishes her family to see that there are places for them to feel welcome, or even the life of a dedicated philanthropist taking time out of their day to volunteer who just happens to be a drag queen, matters. That our lives are just as valuable as those who would seek to shut us out of public spaces because we do not fit their mold of normal or acceptable. Liberty is the state of being free within society from oppressive restrictions imposed by authority on one's way of life, behavior, or political views. I nor anyone else here is demanding that those who take issue with this event be forced to go. No one will take away the library cards of those who do not wish for their children to see or be read to by any volunteer. It is their right to choose what their children are exposed to, just as it is the right to those who wish to go not to be infringed upon by a select few who are demanding resolutions be made. The pursuit of happiness, I feel, is explanatory and no need of explanation. Differences do not get us killed. Somewhere along the way, we must learn to dislike those differences. Then we learn to hate them, then our lives are lost. But not because of the difference itself, but because of the lack of understanding, compassion, or even the refusal to see that even there is difference, that we are still human. Strip a person of their humanity and it becomes much easier to snuff out the light of a life. Those queens are not a danger to your children. They are just here to read a book. And if a discussion comes from it, then that is wonderful. And I would argue that it is no different from a child who was raised as a non-Christian home, or in a non-Christian home, like myself, being exposed to children who are Christian and learning and loving them for who they are. They did not indoctrinate me. They did not force me to live their life, but I accepted them and loved them entirely for being who they were. This is more than just a call to denounce an event deemed by a few to be inappropriate for children, in my opinion. This is the use of faith and the use of tax dollars as a scare tactic to rile up the masses in an attempt to make you all, the council, party to a resolution that would embolden those who would discriminate and truly endanger people in a vulnerable community. I've been seeing those who want this event canceled using tragic deaths of those in the queer community who have taken their own lives as justification for citing the allowance of this event to go unheard. Those numbers would increase. It is in fact quite the opposite. I'm sorry, I misread myself. When people are accepted, or at least welcomed in a space, depression and suicidal thoughts tend to come down. What does increase is the number of deaths in vulnerable and queer communities when we are not accepted. I would just like to take this last 30 seconds to say I went to the library meeting last night and I heard a lot of very upsetting things. And I am thankful for those around me last night that I am here today, because it was very difficult for me to leave that meeting with everything that I heard, with the dark thoughts in my mind, and be standing for you right here, right now. I hope and pray that you just allow people to be people and let them be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ben Broussard, followed by Timothy Miller.
Thank you. My name is Ben Broussard. I'd like to thank the council and president for allowing me to speak this evening. There are many things that I could say to support this resolution that's before you that many others have already said. I could repeat arguments, for instance, about protecting the innocence of children. I'm not going to focus on that. Many others have made the case probably better than I ever could. I could make arguments about this taking place in a taxpayer-funded facility. and you as a taxpayer that allocates taxpayer funding for different programs, et cetera, are responsible for this in some fashion. I could make arguments in that regard, but I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on something else which I'm very surprised no one else has brought up in the whole issue. As Mr. Terrio thankfully pointed out earlier this evening, this is about the drag queens, not about LGBT or any other issue. So let's address drag queens. Many people on both sides tonight and other venues have said drag queens are just men who dress up as women, or something along those lines. Well, I was curious, and I went online to see, drag queen story hour. This isn't something brand new. This has been happening in other parts of the country. So I looked at these videos of these drag queens, and I thought, I've lived in Lafayette a long time. I've traveled to other cities. I've been to other parts of the world. I have yet to meet a woman who looks anything like these drag queens when they are dressed up. Were I a woman, I would feel insulted by their behavior. They are not behaving in a feminine fashion. They are making a mockery of femininity by their behavior. It's one thing to judge someone's intentions. It is crazy not to judge their behavior and their actions. So by their behavior, what they are doing, they are mocking the way women present themselves by their dress, by their demeanor. They are mocking the way that women speak. They are making a mockery of the way women have of just their way of being. Women should be insulted by this. This is not just saying men behaving in such a fashion, etc. Women are being exposed to a gross caricature of what it means to be a woman. Now, somebody could object, well, Mr. Ben, you're a man. How can you say these things? I would argue that as a man, it is my greatest honor and duty to defend the dignity of women. Now, this is connected to the innocence of children that so many have brought up today. So, the innocence of children, 3 to 6-year-olds, being exposed to these men who are not acting as women, but again, presenting a caricature of what it is to be a woman. Do we want 3 to 6-year-old boys to believe this is acceptable? That they can mock the opposite sex and get away with it? What about young girls, 3 to 6 years old? Again, that this is acceptable behavior in our society? As a man, I find it reprehensible that anyone would consider what these drag queens do as entertainment. And so, to conclude, I think I've made my point pretty well up to this point. There have been those who say things along the lines of those who object to programs such as this are on the wrong side of history. Well, history is one thing. Let's remember that history is temporary. Eternity is something entirely different. Wrong side of history, who cares? We want to be on the right side of eternity. Please consider that. Consider the souls of our children that are at stake, of course, and this caricature of femininity which we cannot accept in our community. Thank you.
Timothy Miller, followed by Tara Boatwin.
My name is Timothy Miller. I pastor White Dove Church right down the road, and I'm here, of course, as a pastor, as a father, grandfather, and came to Lafayette many years ago and enjoyed things like Burger Time and, excuse me, the Cajun Blaze and the Acadiana Mall and how exciting it was back then, and just remembered enjoying being in a family atmosphere. My dad used to always say it's the biggest little town because it's got everything you want, but everybody's like family. And that's one of the things that I fell in love about Lafayette because I'm originally from New Orleans. And so when I came here and became a part of this community, this is home, and my children, my son-in-law is a Lafayette police officer, very proud of him, very proud of my daughter who is a nurse. And then I've got another daughter in college, and I got a 7-year-old boy playing flag football right now. And so my life is full with also pastoring a church. But, you know, with Psalms 11:3, and I'm not going to preach, but I just want to say this scripture. If the foundations of a godly society are destroyed, then what can the righteous do? Well, I'm here tonight because I want to be a part of the process. And I'm asking for this resolution to be said yes on your behalf, because I believe that, as it's been stated, there needs to be a message of accountability, because there is just cause. There was a program that was decided to be had with tax dollars that nobody can give a clear answer of how it was decided, who decided it, when it was decided. You know, it's passing the buck, and I feel like that we need to hold the Library Board of Control accountable. There needs to be an investigation of who did what, where and how, where it all came from. And then from there, you know, we move forward in our city, because we know that in Lafayette, we can't just go have a Bible study over there, because we've looked at the rules in the Lafayette Library. We can't go and do certain things there, but as we've heard tonight, tolerance, tolerance, tolerance. But I learned a long time ago that when tolerance is spoken, it's a one-way street. And the problem I have with that is that I don't care who you sleep with in your house at night, because I'm not coming to your house to see who you're sleeping with. But when you have to put that upon me and my children, which I have grandchildren that are 3 to 6, and then I've got my 7-year-old, and then after all the years of youth ministry and being around ministry and seeing children come up and have their own, it's very hard for me to be able to swallow that something like this can happen, and then tolerance, 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 but nobody's tolerant of me. Nobody's willing to be tolerant of my belief. They just want me to be tolerant of theirs. And I don't believe that the definition of tolerance is I'm tolerant of everybody else, but what about me? And so I'm not angry, I'm frustrated, because I believe in the idea of America. I love that flag over there. And the men and the women that died to protect it and still stand for it every day. And what it represents. It represents it here on the local level in Lafayette, that we are a free nation, and that we still have the ability to stand as a free nation founded upon godly principle. And as I read the scripture, if the godly foundations of this society begin to crumble, what will the righteous do? What will all of us do? Now, I'm not pushing my religion on anybody. I'm just asking that somebody else's belief not be pushed on me either. Not in a tax-funded building. Otherwise, let's have a Bible study in the library Saturday. Everybody come and meet me. I can't do it because it's not legal. And I'm okay with that, because I got a pulpit down the street. And that's how America works. So I'm asking you to send a message that we are going to investigate, and we're going to hold accountable those that have made these decisions, and we're going to investigate, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. Thank you so much.
Tara Bodwin, followed by George Armbruster.
Members of the council, thank you for hearing us tonight, Mayor President. I'm Tara Bodwin. I'm a taxpayer of District 6, Mr. Cox district. And first of all, I would like to say that I don't hate anybody. As I'm a Christ follower, that's no secret. And I love everybody, and I wish nobody harm, especially not Mr. Pontiff. I would not want anything bad to happen to him. So I just want to get that out there, because it sounded like he was worried about that. None of us here have any hatred toward anybody who believes the opposite. At least I'm speaking for myself here. I also want to say that I do believe that all of us have an intrinsic value, and we all deserve respect, not because of what we do, but because of who created us. We're all created by God. We all deserve respect. And I also believe that we should teach our children not to bully. I think that's an admirable goal. I think that we should, and I do teach my children to teach others with kindness, even if they're different from us and even if they have different lifestyles. But I think we have to differentiate here between treating people respectfully and also the difference between that and embracing every expression or behavior or idea that people put forth. Now, with Drag Queen Storytime, The publicly funded LPL executives and staff are no longer teaching children not to bully. They're now preaching to children that all ideas about sexuality and gender nonconformity must be embraced and affirmed. And I believe that's evident in the emails. They are wanting to promote gender, all types of gender fluidity. Some have said that drag queen story time's no different than professional actors dressing up in character for entertainment. But drag queen story time is sexual in nature because even a sanitized version of it introduces kids to drag, a sexually charged lifestyle. For those who might not be informed about the behaviors that are being championed to little kids in the taxpayer-funded library, I want to show you what is the nature of drag. Those are posts from one of the UL drag queens who's being lifted up as a role model, who will be reading to kids in drag at the library. I apologize for having to show that, but I think it's important. You might say that the drag queens won't be dressed like this in the library, that it's being filtered, and that library staff have asked that they be relatively modest. We actually saw that in their email exchange in the public documents. But the fact remains, this is the world of drag. And as one library staff member wrote, the message to kids will be that, quote unquote, drag is fantastic. This is not about accepting a person who is different, not even about somebody who happens to be gay reading at the library, but this is instead about government employees promoting a behavior and an ideology in the public square. Even if I don't take my kids that day, because some have told me just don't go, my kids will be interacting with other kids in the community on their teams or in schools. These are the future leaders of our community, maybe. They may be kids, they will be kids who have learned that drag is fantastic. I just want to ask you one question. In the age of Me Too, the pro-pedophilia TED Talks, and the scandals in the church, do you really want to be complicit in teaching children that all behavior and all sexual expression is to be tolerated, no matter how confusing? Silence is not an option tonight. You have an impact on a budget, and you affect what happens at the library with the board. Please vote yes in favor of the resolution. Anything but a yes vote is a vote in favor of drag queen story time and sexualizing children. Thank you.
George Armbruster, followed by Stephanie Armbruster.
Good evening, George Armbruster. I'm a resident of Lafayette for 35 years, Lafayette business owner, and most importantly, a father of three. The people and the City Parish Council need to know that the library staff have been misleading everyone, both directly and indirectly, as regards to the subject program. The 400+ pages of documents that were provided by the library in response to Mayor President Robideau's questions are the source of all the issues that I will address with you this evening. The library continues to claim that the fraternity approached them to have the program. The fact is it didn't. On July 1st, librarian Meredith Crawford wrote in an email that she suggested to a fraternity member that they do a drag queen story time. This focuses on the issue that this isn't First Amendment. This is the government, your employees, promoting an agenda using our tax dollars. On July 12, Ms. Elberson began coordinating, so 11 days later, a meeting with the staff to, quote, make sure we can defend this. Should any children's story time need defending? An email from children's librarian Angela Criddle to the fraternity member contained the following, quote, the library requests that all outfits be relatively modest. Does the LPL usually have to ask its storytime readers to dress modestly? And should we only ask them to dress relatively modestly? How about completely modestly in front of our 3 to 6 year olds? Same email, quote, I will choose 3 books that show gender fluidity for our book choices. That's your library employee choosing the books, not about anti-bullying, but about gender fluidity. Same email. Quote, after story time, in lieu of a craft, our drag queens will talk to our story time guests about what drag is and why it is fantastic. Tara just addressed that with you. Your librarian is setting the agenda for what these people are going to be teaching our 3 to 6-year-olds. Same email. There may be a G-rated drag show. Our children are being hypersexualized by your staff who are setting the agenda for what's going to happen to the program. Additionally, children's librarian Meredith Crawford documented that she is, quote, totally down for a once-a-semester PJ party with these frat boys. You heard it right. It's in the documents. How many hours of library staff time and how many tax dollars have been spent to plan and defend this inappropriate program? Now some direct misrepresentations. Number one, in an August 20 email, Ms. Elberson claims she, quote, misspoke about the content, close quote, in an earlier email to Ms. Cook, and added that, quote, these story times don't really mention sex or gender. However, I already told you in her July 13th email, which was over a month earlier, she had told the fraternity that she will choose 3 books that show gender fluidity for our book choices. Ms. Cook, you were misled. Number 2, on August 23, Ms. Elberson responds to an email question from Councilmember Hebert regarding the book to be read by saying, quote, I understand that as of Saturday, August 18th, the children's librarians have not yet selected the titles that will be read. However, over a month earlier, on July 21, Angela Criddle emailed coworkers the 3 books that she, quote, will be using for story time, which of course all focus on gender identity. The 3 books, From the Stars in the Sky to the Fish in the Sea, Jacob's New Dress, and Prince and Knight, using the Amazon descriptions of the books, every single one of them focuses on gender confusion or dressing in clothing that is not appropriate for your God-given gender. If you don't step in and stop this event, what will you do the next time when an even more inappropriate program is promoted by your library staff? And I've tried to figure out what is a constitutionally protected, absolutely outrageous activity that you might be presented with. Believe it or not, the ability to teach someone else how to build a bomb is protected under the First Amendment of the United States. So what if your librarians decide that it's a good idea to have a library program where we invite individuals, let's not restrict it to children, but let's even say adults, and we're going to teach them how to build bombs? Will you too take the position, we can't do anything, our library control board decided to sit on their hands too, and we're just going to let the bomb building program take place? I sure hope not. Anything other than a yes vote is a vote in support of the program, against the children of our community, and is a ratification of the deceptive actions of your library staff. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, Councilman Biller.
Mr. Armbruster, I have a question for you. I was not aware of that, so can you read the beginning again? I thought the fraternity approached the library.
No, sir.
Can you read me, because I did not know that.
Sure. On July 1, librarian Meredith Crawford suggested to the fraternity member that they do a drag queen story time.
So it was not the other way around.
Correct.
And can
And
you,
I don't have the actual email with,
I do.
okay.
I can
My wife can provide it
can
for
we
you.
the 3 books again, please?
Yes, sir. Or actually, you can have these notes. It has the names of the books. It's From the Stars in the Sky to the Fish in the Sea, Jacob's New Dress, and Prince and Knight, and I have the Amazon descriptions. I just didn't want to run out of time.
Thank you. If you can just hand that to the clerk, please. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Next speaker is Stephanie Armbruster. Thank you. And she will be followed by Linda Langclose.
Thank you, council members, for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you today. First, I'm going to start off by saying that all life is valuable. And out of love is why I am here today to talk about this. I'll give a little background of, I've been in the Lafayette area for over 20 years now. I moved to this area in my college days. I'm a graduate of USL, got my master's degree there. I think that's what fostered a desire to research, which is probably why you receive so many emails from me, because I've done a lot of research on this. As George mentioned, we have 3 kids. We have one that just graduated college recently. We have a junior in high school and also a 7-year-old. So this is very important to us. And I'm a home educator with the last 2 of my children. I was very concerned looking at the responses, going through the 400 plus pages that the library submitted to see what we've learned. The responses submitted by the library revealed numerous occasions that the library had misrepresented the intent of the Drag Queen Storytime. It is not at all about bullying. The library director said to an email to Ms. Cook, quote, "Kids that age are usually not judgmental." Exactly. So why would we be having a story time focused on bullying? It's because we're not. This is about introducing transgenderism to young children. All of the books the library considered and ordered for this program focus on gender fluidity, not bullying. And if you need a list of those books, I have that here as well. What's being lauded as good, current, and needed is only one side of the story. Out of love, I'm here to talk to you about the other side of the story. Lisa Littman of Brown University conducted a study and found that children who suffer from rapid onset gender dysphoria tend to experience this at the same time as their friends. This pattern indicates a type of groupthink among peers. Nonspecific symptoms such as feeling uncomfortable in their own skins or feeling like they don't fit in, which could be a part of normal puberty, is erroneously perceived as gender dysphoria. Drag Queen Storytime sets up an environment for this type of groupthink. Don't let this happen on your watch. The head of the psychiatry department at Johns Hopkins University explained how he stopped allowing sex change surgeries after research and experience showed that the surgeries in which men sought to become women did not cure underlying psychological problems, and that the desire for the surgery was instead the byproduct of other psychological and sexual disorders. In his words, "We have wasted scientific and technical resources and damaged our professional credibility by collaborating with madness rather than trying to study, cure, and ultimately prevent it." A drag queen storytime focused on gender fluidity can contribute to people seeking sex change surgeries instead of treating the root of their problems. Dr. Charles Inlandfeld, who administered hormone therapy for 6 years to 500 transgenders, said, "There is too much unhappiness among people who have had the surgery. Too many of them end as suicides. Let's learn from the doctors who have been there. Oppose the drag queen storytime." Finally, in the words of a former transgender, Walt Heyer, "I was a 4-year-old trans kid who grew up with gender confusion and underwent gender reassignment surgery at the age of 42. I lived for 8 years as a so-called trans female, but no matter how feminine I appeared, like all transgenders, I was just a man in a dress. I was unhappy, regretful of having transitioned, and I attempted suicide. After many decades of trying to comprehend the gender confusion that persisted, I came to understand that my grandmother's cross-dressing of me was emotional child abuse." I feel bad for the fraternity hearing those guys speak up here because I feel like they've been exploited by our library who invited them and put them in this situation. Last night at the library, I kept hearing intolerance, that we are intolerant, and that we fear the unknown. But I have to say something about that. For those of us who have family members who have died of AIDS, it's not the unknown we fear the known. Anything other than a yes vote is a vote in support of the drag queen story time and against the children of our community. You must vote in support of this resolution. Thank you.
Linda Langclose, followed by Pat Briney.
My name is Linda Longclough. I'm the director and founder of Escape from Poverty. And so I'm all about diversity. I am all about trying to help people love each other across racial and socioeconomic lines. Also, no one can accuse me of being a homophobe because my own brother died of AIDS, and I left my family in Texas and moved in with my mom for a few months to help take care of him on his deathbed. AIDS is a horrible way to die. 1,122,900 people are dying of AIDS today. Over 500,000 have already died of AIDS. And in 2016, 39,782 people were diagnosed with AIDS. This is a dangerous lifestyle, and it is reprehensible to me that it would be allowed to be promoted with our tax dollars. Why would we do that? I can't even imagine in my wildest dreams that an alcoholic or a drug addict might come and be allowed to promote their lifestyle. Hey, it feels so good to be high. Y'all come do it. This is cool. Would you allow that? Of course you wouldn't allow that, and yet you're allowing this dangerous lifestyle to be promoted. They say just don't come. Well, my husband and I take our grandson to the library story times. He loves it. We love it. And of course I'm not going to take him to the drag queen story time, but the deal is, this is going to happen right before Halloween. This is going to be October 6th. How many of those kids are then going to want to go and dress like drag queens at school? They get to dress up in Halloween costumes when they go to school. How many of those kids are then going to go and dress up as drag queens and promote that lifestyle and talk about how cool it is because they saw it at the library? So you're launching an initiative here by allowing this. Don't do that. It is just so irresponsible to allow our tax dollars in this conservative Christian community to be used to promote such a dangerous lifestyle. Thank you.
Pat Briney, followed by Thomas Drake.
Pat Briney, I'm a local attorney, father of 5 children, 4 of whom we raised here in Lafayette. Loved to go to the library. My late wife would never believe that this could have happened. So being a lawyer, I did the thing that comes naturally. I sent a public records request because I wanted to know how this could possibly happen. And I got apparently the same response the mayor got, or the armbroosters got. And I was appalled. Senior management of the Lafayette Public Library has been deliberately deceptive about how drag queen story time got started. Mr. Armbruster read the emails. I sent those to y'all this morning. This was not the idea of the fraternity at UL. This was the idea of the senior, or the children's librarian, Meredith Crawford. That is the person that is first and foremost accountable for why we're all here tonight. The next 2 who are responsible are Sarah Durr, who is the youth services manager of the main library, and Angela Criddle, who is the children's librarian at the main library. And then ultimately responsible is Teresa Albertson, the director of the library. I can appreciate the advice Mr. Escott has had to give you because it is very difficult after you've approved the budget for these people to do anything immediately. But I'm here to tell you that passage of this resolution will be the first step forward in cleaning up the library, because there's a lot wrong down there. And I thank you, Mayor Robideau, for your leadership on this. Mr. Theriault, Mr. Bellard, I thank you for your leadership. Nanette, if I heard correctly, you're going to vote for this. Liz, Kevin, Bruce is gone. Ken?
No, Bruce is there.
Oh, I'm sorry. You switched. Don't confuse me. Don't confuse me. I should have seen the bow tie. Jay, please support this. Let me give you another example of what's wrong down at the library. In the old days, when I wanted to know something and I didn't have the book at home, I would go to the library to see if there was a book on a particular subject that I was interested in. Well, now we all get on the internet. But I got curious as to what was available at the Lafayette Public Library, which might be critical of this whole crazy notion of gender fluidity. When you get on the library website, you can search by title and subject. And when you do that, and you print in transgender, you get about 88 books, about 75 of which are really about transgenderism, fiction and nonfiction. Virtually every one of them is supportive of that lifestyle. And I'm not here to tell you such books should not be in a library or that people should not have access to those. What is not there are books critical of gender fluidity and transgenderism. Most notably, Ryan Anderson's When Harry Became Sally, responding to the transgender moment. This just came out this past year. I think it was published in February or March. You would expect a library in Lafayette, Louisiana would have this book on its shelves. We don't. There's a problem at the library, and y'all need to fix it. Thank you.
Thomas Drake, followed by Matthew Morton.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, President, Joel Robucho, and distinguished chair, and the distinguished members of the City Parish Council. My name is Thomas Drake, director of TFP Louisiana, a civic organization of Catholics with 34,000 members in the state of Louisiana. I've been a patron of the main public library for over 20 years. Like many people in this room, I never thought of being here. We are not here with acrimony toward anyone, however wrong, but because a culture war is underway. This is not just about men dressing in women's clothing, in drag. The early correspondence, as we all heard, about the books for the 3 to 6-year-olds coming to this drag queen story time made clear that it was about gender identity. The National Conference of the American Library Association in New Orleans last June promoted the program, which comes from San Francisco. You need to just look it up, dragqueenstoryhour.org. Transgender ideology holds that people can be born into the wrong body. No one is born in the wrong body. To teach little children that it is so destroys their ability to understand reality. Our sex is imprinted in our DNA. Mutilating the body does not change a person's sex. There is no greater diversity than male and female. It's written on every cell of our body at the level of our DNA. Biology is reality, not bigotry. If my feelings alone determine who I am, then there really is no such thing as a man or a woman. So this is more than just about drag. All you have to do is look at the activists weighing in on this drag queen story time for 3 to 6-year-olds to see that. Why is this so important to them? Because it is more than just drag show. When the news broke about the transgender program for 3 to 6-year-olds at the public library, as you know, the most common reaction was, "What? I don't believe that's possible." Then, when realizing that it was, came the question, what can we do? So we launched a petition to stop it. We started on August 23rd, and I will here for the attention of our Honorable Consul show that all there. In less than 3 weeks, more than 17,000 of our people signed this petition to you and to the Library Board of Control. It was delivered yesterday to the Board of Control with cordiality and respect for all their other achievements for the community. Now, what does this petition ask? The petition asks that all support for the drag queen story time in the public library be withdrawn, because to expose young children to unnatural, delusional behavior and subject them to a bold pro-transgender activism is immoral, it is harmful, and it is confusing. The American College of Pediatricians, and these are professionals, warns, and I quote, "Conditioning children into believing that a lifetime of chemical and surgical impersonation of the opposite sex is normal and healthful is child abuse." And so we ask, why is the Lafayette Public Library fueling this new form of child abuse? Why is the American Library Association fueling this child abuse? It is my duty to present this petition to you on behalf of those 17,124 deeply concerned citizens. Well, as we support the resolution of this council to denounce the corruption of children at our library, we want these sex education classes for 3 to 6-year-olds canceled. Thank you for listening to those of us who are not usually politically active, but were stirred into action by this brutal endeavor to corrupt the children of Acadiana. Thank you.
Matthew Morton.
Yes, I'll bring it to Mrs. Williams.
Is Matthew Morton here? Robert Zanini. And he will be followed by Melanie Brevis. And she's number 40 of 78.
My name is Bob Zanini. I'm the pastor at Life Church here in Lafayette. I am a father of 2 children and a grandfather of 6, one of who is in heaven today. I've come today to be a part of this process. I believe in government. Members of my church know that I teach biblical positions on government and what government serves, and those that are elected to those positions and appointed to those positions, how that is a biblical foundation for our lives, and that we are to pray for them that are in leadership and support them, but also have the right and should take the position to speak out when those opportunities arise. The Drag Queen Story Hour has been described as, quote, an afternoon of books, songs, and activities, unquote. And then they said that the stories will center on, quote, individuality, openness, and acceptance, unquote. I've listened tonight about the fact that there's no agenda, and yet we clearly have heard that and they said there's no sexuality or anything like that, and yet arguments are that people need to know that people are different. We heard that the books that have been selected are definitely have a specific message behind it. It's not just a matter of coming together and reading simple children's books. The reading of children's stories has also been said to teach them about gender fluidity and tolerance in this area. I realize that there may be a few people who may not know what that term gender fluidity means, and it is a gender identity best described as a dynamic mix of boy and girl. A person who is gender fluid may always feel like a mix of the 2 traditional genders, but may feel more like a boy someday and a girl other days. And I was a teacher for Christian educators for many years, teaching them how to teach and understand the mental development process of small children. And one of the things that we simply pointed out was to understand the process in which they are developing. As far as gender identity, typically develops around the stages of age 2. Children become conscious of the physical differences between boys and girls. By the 3rd birthday, most children could easily label themselves as either a boy or girl, and by age 4, most children have a stable sense of gender identity. And once children begin to think about their gender as a stable trait, they start to incorporate that into their own identity. Around that time, they become motivated to relate to members of their group, to seek out gender-related information, often becoming very strict about adhering to gender stereotypes. Example, children between the ages of 3 and 5 prefer to play with members of their own gender. They also prefer to engage in gender stereotype toys and activities. After the age of 5, most children believe that outward changes in clothing and hairstyle don't constitute a change in gender. It's not until usually around 7 to 10 years of age that children become more relaxed about maintaining their behaviors in a more stricter male or female environment. And for example, you may find boys or girls that are getting a little older, and all of a sudden a girl considers herself a little bit of a tomboy, or a guy maybe likes to play with girls, with dolls or something like that. But children in a very young age are not able to think in an abstract form. They're very simple about things. I think about my son when he was young. He had a little soldier with a parachute on it, and he could throw it up in the air and the parachute would open and it would come down. And one afternoon I caught him on the back storage shed, and he had his little soldier with the parachute in hand. He's about to jump off. I asked him what he was doing. He said, well, the parachute worked for him, it would work for me. That's the way children that are young, that's the way they think. And that's why we have laws that protect children, and that we as adults determine those things that are important to protect our children about. I've been told to boycott these things, but children can't boycott. They go where adults take them. So I admonish you to please vote in favor of this resolution and let your voice be heard. Thank you.
Melanie Brevis, followed by Adam Broussard.
Good evening, Council. Melanie Brevis, District 8. I wanted to begin by answering Councilman Terrio's poll that he started with Mr. Brad Parfait about halfway through. He asked this college student whether he had any kids, any 3 to 6-year-olds, which I thought was an odd question to ask a college student. However, he hasn't asked anybody else since then that pointedly a question. So I just wanted to reply that yes, I do have children. I have a 5-year-old and I have an 8-year-old, and we will both be at the library at the Drag Queen Storytime on October 6th. In the past 4 weeks, Lafayette has made the news with our Storytime controversy. The National Coalition Against Censorship issued a statement condemning Mayor Robideau's attempt to block this event. The New York Times and Associated Press have also provided coverage. Given that this is hardly the first place in the country to host a drag queen story time, this is making our city look, quite frankly, backwards. Like we are not mature, open-minded, or progressive enough to accept this event, regardless of if we ourselves choose to attend. In the past 4 weeks, I, and I'm sure some of my fellow library supporters have as well, have had to endure some ugly, small-minded remarks. We've also listened to some more of those types of remarks tonight. And it's the same tired language that has been used for centuries to prevent change and to oppress. But one remark that stuck with me that I heard a couple of weeks ago was that my opinions are outsider ideas that have no place here and do not represent the views of, quote unquote, the people of Lafayette. I don't know who the people of Lafayette are who apparently hold the monopoly on opinions here. Maybe they're the religious leaders in the email attached to the resolution. Maybe they're the outside super PAC that seems intent on jeopardizing our pursuit of good quality schools and libraries, although that would actually be Person of Lafayette, since only one of those leaders actually lives here. Maybe they're the 17,000 people who live somewhere who signed an opposition petition headed by a Catholic organization. A representative from this organization spoke last night and also tonight, and I thought it was interesting that they, a religious organization, were worried about the library introducing child abuse or stealing the innocence of children. And I'll just leave everyone to think about that irony. Regardless, none of these people or groups represent all citizens. They don't represent all opinions. The protesters speaking out against this story time last night only made the case for why libraries and authoritative sources are so crucial. One person worried about what this would do to their little kids and their emotional development. He was obviously misinformed by somebody about how library programs work. You only show up if you want to. And even if you show up when there's a program going on, it's not taking up the whole library. You can still go and not be a part of it. Somebody else seemed to think that drag queens, fraternities, love, acceptance, and story times were all registered political parties, as he made a comparison to the Republican Party. They're not, and the library can help that person figure that out too. Finally, somebody made the disturbing and completely false assertion that there is a causal relationship between drag queen story times and children's risk of AIDS. She should most certainly see a librarian and receive proper factual information. Finally, someone here said tonight that gender is determined at birth, which is a very outdated model, and I think that person could definitely use a library as well. There is so much more that should be taking priority right now. Our budget is a hot mess, our drainage problems are far from over, so I don't want to be discussing this right now. Is this really where council and the mayor want to make their legacy? By trying to shut down a library program that 2 to 5 years from now probably won't even seem that controversial. I thank the library for taking a stance against bullies, and I hope the council will too. I'm a librarian too. I'm very proud of my profession. I'm proud of our defense of free speech, and I'm proud of our ability to continue to adapt and to be innovative. And that's what libraries do. This aspect can't always be quantified, but it's crucial to communities. Libraries introduce new ideas, and they help to lessen people's fear, whether it's by offering them a book or a reference, or by introducing something that might be unfamiliar to the community. And by breaking down those barriers of fear, we begin to work together for change, for a better community. Thank you.
Adam Broussard. Brandon Trott, followed by Parissa, and I'll let them say their last name. Brandon Trott.
Good evening. Just want to thank you for your service to our community, and as many have said before, I pity you. I love things like the Discovery Channel, and every once in a while you get to see one of those animals that's pinned to the ground by a massive lion, and they look at the camera and they make eye contact, and they just know they can't get away, and you feel that pity. Well, I feel that for you now, and I apologize for contributing as part of the lion. So my name is Brandon Trott. I'm the pastor of New Beginning Fellowship Church in Breaux Bridge, and I'm also the principal of our school, New Beginning Christian Academy. And I'm here to ask you to consider that the Drag Queen Storytime may not be an appropriate and responsible event for a public, taxpayer-funded entity to promote. I am committed to the Word of God as the standard for moral ideas, and I'm sure that some of you have a religious faith or background. However, I am not here to appeal to your religious opinions on the matter. I understand the separation of church and state, and I really prefer that government leaders are not making rules based upon their personal interpretation of Scripture, because it is not the government's place to tell us what we ought to believe and make that the standard of law. But I assume that you have convictions that guide you to make decisions that best serve those you represent, and it is to those convictions that I am appealing to. The stated purpose of this event is to teach love, tolerance, and inclusion, instead of bullying and hurtful behavior towards those who are different than the typical person. This sounds like an ideal that all of us would like to get behind. I teach my children to be loving and kind to all people, no matter what. I encourage those in our church to be generous and loving to every person they have a chance to reach out to. However, I think the described purpose of the event is inaccurate, if not even a little misleading. I don't even think that's a guess anymore after the emails that we've heard read aloud tonight. They do not intend to bring kids around a certain group of people and explain to them they shouldn't be mean, rude, or unkind to them. It is meant to endorse their lifestyle choices and beliefs about gender, sexuality, and moral issues. It is meant to change the way that society views human nature. It is, in fact, a belief system, one that is rooted thoroughly in subjective feeling, not in fact, science, or objective reality. The content of the books I have heard read during other similar events are all aimed at explaining gender and sexuality in the most fluid terms possible. And they not only portray these things as true regarding themselves, but inherently true as facts, even going so far as asking the children if they think that they might be gay, lesbian, transsexual, or interested in cross-dressing when they grow up, confusing things that a child should not have to think about yet. It is child abuse. It is unkind. It is manipulative to their innocent minds. I deal with children 3 to 6 year old every day, and I can tell you if I could talk to them long enough, I could convince them they're a chair. It is unkind to them to do this kind of thing. And they not only portray these things, truly if a parent wants to expose their child to these ideas, it is their right to do so. However, I think it is irresponsible for a government-funded entity whose sole responsibility is to provide an opportunity to learn and have an openness to thought, even thoughts we might not like this one, to endorse as fact a set of beliefs. Because to hold this event is not to be open to ideas, it is to endorse as factual and moral a set of beliefs, beliefs which are said in the charter and on the poster hanging outside of the library that the public library is not a place for proselytizing beliefs, and it is beliefs. It is not facilitating this idea, it is teaching them that something is right and wrong. It is not facilitating an open look at all ideas. It is choosing an idea as virtuous and validating it above others, even though these ideas are still being disputed among scientific and psychological literature. And I don't think this is the government's place. I'm not an enemy to anyone. I sincerely invite civil dialogue and friendship with anyone who wishes to have it, but that invitation does not include the indoctrination of children into disputable and potentially harmful beliefs. And I would like to say as well this idea that they are not accountable to you as the local governing officials. If that's true, then there is a government-paid entity that is out of the control of the people, and this is not moral, it's not responsible, it's not okay. And if they are out of your control, then you need to find out what you need to do to get them under your control, because it is funded by us and we have no say-so in the matter. And so I would appreciate just our community showing you all the support that you need to help you do that, because I know that you desire to be responsible. I see your burden. If you're sitting through this beating, you care. So we just show you our support. We appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Parisa
Memarian Liu. Hi, I'm District 6. I'm here tonight to oppose the resolution and speak in support of Drag Queen Story Hour. And the reason why is simple. Lafayette has a homophobia and transphobia problem, as has been demonstrated here this evening. I've heard the gay community compared to pedophiles. I've heard the gay community compared to alcoholics, to drug addicts, to jihadis. This is a problem. It is actively harming the young people of this community. And the Story Hour is one small way to start actively embracing the LGBT members of our community and creating a more just world right here in our own backyard. People who do not support it do not have to attend the event. Nobody is making anyone's child watch people in costumes read stories to children. And the truth is that the people who are trying to shut down this event are infringing on the rights and freedoms of other parents. Further, given that this council has no control over library programming, I cannot help but think that the resolution introduced by council members Terrio and Bellard is nothing but empty grandstanding, perhaps to distract from far more important community issues, such as creating separate councils for the city and the parish in our upcoming December election, as well as the potential privatization of LUS. Instead of wasting everyone's time, perhaps Councilman Terrio and Bellard could focus on more critical matters. Thank you.
James Odoms.
Excuse me, Mr. Billard.
Yes, first of all, I don't think these people consider it a waste of time. And second of all, number one, as an elected official, I need to make my stance known, and that's why I did this. And third of all, as a father, I owe it to my kids, because this is my belief. I politely think you were a little out of line there, just for the sake of, it's not a waste of time. It's not. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
James Odom, followed by Teresa Wasilowski.
My name is James Odom. I'm a resident of Lafayette area. I live in Scott. I recently retired. I'm a volunteer Anglican Catholic deacon, not Episcopal, not Roman. I'm a volunteer deacon for the Anglican Catholic Church here in town. I've tried to keep these remarks kind of short, and I've been very impressed with much of the remarks that were made tonight. I want to mention 3 words that I build my remarks around: tolerance, approval, and promotion. America's the place that's tolerant. America's the place where you have freedom of speech. America's the place that has the ideals that we try to live up to throughout our lives. Tolerance is a popular word nowadays, but it's almost becoming like anti-free speech, that you can't say anything that's not tolerant sounding. As a matter of fact, even in the term tolerance, there is a little bit of an inclination to think that there's not approval of what one is tolerant of. We have a rule of law, we have laws that we follow, and we respect other people's opinions, and we act properly and try to obey the law and not be the biggest bully on the school ground, and grow up not to be the biggest bully at the workplace. But if you're tolerant, which I like to think that most of us are, that doesn't mean that you approve of what you are tolerant of. And promotion is the third word. And that's what I think a lot of this is about promoting an agenda. It's a kind of just let's get in your face community and put something out that on the surface would seem maybe offensive, and just see what you'll do about it. Let's challenge the traditional mores. Let's force an agenda down your throat. Let's let there be no taboos in society, no things that are generally disapproved of, even though they may be tolerated. Alcohol is tolerated, but alcoholism is not approved. It's really disingenuous, in my opinion, to make statements about bullying. I think our school system does a real good job of teaching that bullying is bad. I see that all up and down the halls if I go into a school. I think that's wonderful. Most of us at one time or another have been beat up on the school bus, I think. I think the spending of public funds in the promotion of an idea of a sexual minority and recruiting effort of 3-year-olds is terrible. America's values do have the idea of free speech and tolerance and kindness and benevolence. And we have not always lived up to our values, but we have usually tried to correct our errors. This is not about storytelling. It's about a Saul Alinsky type of tactic to undermine the traditional values of American society. The fraternity members are just pawns in this action. Edmund Burke coined the expression, in order for evil to win out, all that's necessary is for other people to do nothing. People are not doing nothing in Lafayette. Longfellow said, in the field of battle, in the bivouac of life, be not like dumb and driven cattle, be a hero in the strife. So I encourage you, councilmen, be a hero in the strife. Thank you.
Teresa Wasilowski, followed by Russell Dorian Jr.
Good evening, council members. My name is Teresa Wasilowski. I have been a resident of Lafayette for 12 years, and I am the mother of a 13-year-old boy. I'm here to voice my support for Drag Queen Storytime and hopefully articulate why I think this program is so important and why canceling it would send a wrong message to our entire community. I speak to you this evening with respect for your right to your opinions, your beliefs, perspectives, respect for you as individuals and fellow humans, and I ask that you hear me with the same respect. There's nothing wrong with dressing in drag, and there is nothing wrong with fitting in anywhere on the LGBTQ plus spectrum. There's nothing wrong with gender fluidity. People choose how they conduct themselves, and they can easily do this regardless of what they are wearing and who they choose to love and who they choose to sleep with. There is no reason to assume that a drag queen reading a story to children would behave in any type of inappropriate way. There's nothing dangerous about children seeing men dressed in women's clothing. What is dangerous is excluding people who are different than you. It is harmful. And I learned this from a story called The Ugly Duckling, which I think I read for the first time somewhere between the ages of 3 and 6 years old. I work as an artist and an educator. As an artist, I get to meet lots of different people, and as an educator, I see somewhere between around 400 students a week. I enjoy working with children because they are so honest and open, and funnily enough, this morning I walked into a pre-K class, and a little boy said to me with a very disappointed look on his face, "I can't wear makeup because I'm a boy." I thought that was interesting for that to happen this morning. That honesty and openness makes it easy for me to see that my students and all people really just want to be seen and loved for who they are. They deserve to be seen and loved for who they are, and they deserve to know that, and so do adults. A child between the ages of 3 and 6 may not have the capacity to know how they identify, but they can understand the idea of different, and they need to understand that different is okay, and so do adults. Different can be scary and hard to accept, and different challenges our beliefs, sometimes asks us to look inside of ourselves and see things that we don't want to see. Different can become so scary that we choose not to tolerate it in others or ourselves, and we may get the idea from our family or our peers that to be different means to be not good enough, that we are hurting ourselves and others because we are different, and that being different is shameful. And these are false notions, and they are very dangerous. What shame does is devalue people. It tells people that they are less than and that they do not deserve. And I think the subject of sex and sexuality is so taboo in our culture because of the massive amounts of shame that we carry with it and heap upon it. People are judged, valued, or devalued based upon their sexual history, identity, and experiences, and this needs to stop. The effects of shame are devastating for everyone, but perhaps especially for members of high-risk groups such as the LGBTQ youth. They're not at risk because of who they love, what they wear, who they have sex with, how they identify. They're at risk because they are so often not accepted, because they are abandoned, abused, bullied, made unwelcome by their families, because they're belittled by their peers and strangers on social media, turned away from by their community. And when our societal norms are valued over an individual or group's well-being, we are a sick society and we perpetuate that sickness. I would protect my children from that by asking the leaders of my community to trusting people who are different, whose beliefs are not our own, or we just do not understand can be a real challenge. It requires empathy, courage, faith, and compassion. It asks us to lay down the fear that we have carried for generations. To trust sends a message of hope and of love and of valuing others and seeing their humanity as we see our own. It's to know that we are all in the same boat and that we all deserve to be here. It sets an example not only for young children who may not fully understand the message, but it sets an example for the youth and the young people who are here with us in this room tonight, who are fighting for acceptance, self-love, and tolerance. And it would honor those who are not with us tonight because they lost that fight. Thank you for your time.
Russell Dorian Jr., followed by Cole Broussard.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. I come to you from the Destiny of Faith Christian Center Church, where I am a minister there. I have heard a lot of passionate speeches today about people's feelings, their thoughts, and their ideals about this particular situation. But as I sat and I listened to everyone speak, the one thing that came to me is, what does God say about all this? You see, our country was founded on the principles of God. And the Bible says that in the book of John that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So the principles that this country was founded upon came from the very Word of God. But our country today is in shambles. We have never had so much discord, so much divide, so much confusion and strife. Why? Because our country has stepped away from the foundations of the principle of God. Now, we all are an imperfect people, and God knows that. But as we stand here today and we speak to you, I have to speak from the perspective that God is not pleased with our actions right now. And it is because of our unrighteousness in the world today that this sin that we are facing and dealing with today is so prevalent in our society. Now, I'm not trying to inflict my belief on you, but I want you to think about what I am saying. Because at the end of our life, we will all stand before our Maker, and we will all have to give an account of every action, every deed, every statement that we have ever made. But the Bible tells us that there is nothing new under the sun, and that the world would hate what is good and love what is evil. Does that sound like our world today? But you see, the same thing that's happening now is the very same thing that happened in the Word of God, where they continued to sin over and over and over again and did exactly what they wanted to do, and God would allow them to fall into bondage. And our country is in bondage because of sin today. So the question is, will our leaders, because the Bible tells us that God has appointed the leaders of our government, will our leaders stand up and say this is not right, and begin to turn and speak and do right by God? And until that happens, we will continue to see discord. We will continue to see strife and confusion all throughout this country. God is not pleased with us. And I ask you to begin to go and think about your situations. Think about your actions. Think about yourself. And I'm not just speaking to you guys. I'm speaking to everyone who is here. We need to take a Selah moment and pause and begin to think about, is my life, are my actions pleasing to God? This is not about hate. This is not about differences. God made us all different. But the one thing that remains the same and steadfast is that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And His word will never change. And until God's people, which is all of us, because we are all created in the image and the likeness of our Father in heaven. And it is until we as the children of God begin to turn from our wicked ways, and I will leave you with this last scripture, 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and heal their land. America will not be healed until we turn from our wicked ways and we repent and we move towards God. Thank you for your time tonight.
Cole Broussard, followed by Lydia Romero.
Good evening. Before I begin, I'd like to just address the question posed to my fraternity brother, Brad Parfait, about whether or not he had children. I, like many other people here tonight, do not have children. Our parental status has nothing to do with, it has nothing to do with wanting to help our community and has no reflection on the event in question's validity. This question was disrespectful to not only Brad's hard work in organizing this event in partnership with the library, but disrespectful to his personal struggle as well, and to our entire organization. So now let me begin. Good evening again. My name is Cole Broussard. I'm the Communications Director of Delta Lambda Phi Social Fraternity at UL, and I'm speaking on behalf of our organization. Like many others here tonight, Lafayette is our home, first and foremost. Growing up, we were actively involved with our local public libraries at storytime events like this one, and summer reading kickoffs. I know personally I went to almost all of the summer reading kickoffs growing up. To bring an inclusive and unique event such as this to the library has been one of our goals from the foundation of our organization. Among Delta Lambda Phi's core values are diversity, integrity, and service. Diversity being a key one that I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about tonight. And these are values that we strive to embody in our everyday lives. Our belief system, if you would like to call it that, is love and service to our community. Drag Queen Storytime was conceived on these principles and is fundamentally for our community. It is a love letter to Lafayette. We respect the council's decision, whatever it may be, in support or opposition, but we urge the council to recognize our organization's members as, first and foremost, members of this community. Thank you for your time.
Lydia Romero, followed by Alicia Roberts.
Hello, my name is Lydia Romero. I'm a member of District 2. We live in a constitutional republic.